Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism podcast about urbanism and stuff. Today, we decided to start 1 minute early from our usual live podcast, which we usually start at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, which you can join if you are a Patreon subscriber. Right now in the chat, I see Austin, I see Jen, and I see Nick. What is Nick doing in the chat? Well, folks, it's because today I, Alex Williams, your co-host, I am joined by another Alex, which of course we're delighted to have you back on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for bringing me back. I'm excited to chat with you all again.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you.
Wonderful.
We like having repeat guests because you know what to expect. And of course, we're also joined by one of our regular hosts, Ethan Myers.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in live, or if you're watching it tomorrow, that's cool too. We're just glad that you're here.
Yeah, and yeah, we do miss Nick this week, but he's away on an adventure that I'm sure he'll have an interesting video coming out at some point to talk about. But before we get into the stories, we do have a few sad things to talk about today. But before we get into that, let's chat with Ethan. Ethan, what's your update?
So, folks, I may or may not have mentioned this last week, but I just wanted to let everybody know, I know we don't have a whole ton of Vegas listeners, but it's a little announcement for our Vegas listeners that are out there. RTC Vegas is doing some bus schedule rerouting coming up that will take effect September 15th or 14th. I can't remember the specific day. It's one of those 2 days. But anyways, they're going to be doing a whole bus rescheduling. Some routes have changed. Some frequencies have changed. We're going to have a link down below to it. So if you're in the area and you ride the buses and you want a little bit of an update, links down below.
And Ethan, did you fight for this change a little bit?
I may have pressured a little bit of some of the changes that did end up occurring. They weren't exactly what I pressured for specifically, but it did end up with more service on my end. So, as Nick and Alex have said before, squeakiest wheel gets the grease.
Yeah, it's super true. You actually, you got to be involved, and if you don't have a seat at the table, you got to take a seat at the table. You got to make your voice heard in order to make your city a better place.
Absolutely.
What about you, Alex? Before we started recording the podcast, you told me a little bit about this other podcast you were listening to. Can you tell us a little bit about this episode and recommendation you've got for everyone?
Yes. So I was listening to the episode of This American Life, and the episode was called "Must Be Rats on the Brain," and it was really exciting because basically it went through the history of how but how New York City has been dealing with the rat situation, but also contrasting it with how Alberta, as an entire province, has been able to have no rats at all. And so the story was kind of funny because they got these actors and they were pretending to be rats, and so they would interview them from their perspective while spewing rat facts from New York, from the New York perspective. They followed the story of this one gentleman who had 12 rats living in his house on purpose, explaining all of the benefits that rats have, or maybe not the benefits that they have in urban context, but more so as a companion, as a pet. They make really good pets apparently. But yeah, the most interesting part about the history of how Toronto, I keep saying Toronto, sorry. I'm in Toronto, if anyone's wondering, that's why. How New York City
Toronto, New York,
It's just they compare them so many times cities. That in my brain, they're the Big Apple, the Six, one and the same, apparently, in my brain.
Well, especially, yeah.
I mean, if you're going off Hollywood, yeah, they're the same city.
Exactly.
Exactly. I always love when they kind of hang a lantern on that. I wanna share my screen here. I want to show people a little bit of the propaganda we got going on in Alberta that helps us stay rat free here. And it's actually, so my mom lives pretty close to the border, and they come around and they check
Yeah.
they check and they look for any
Rats.
rat sign, right? Like they check for scat and everything else. And if you think that you may have seen a rat, you can call 310 farm and report the sighting. Most sightings of rats in Alberta aren't rats. Actually, they end up being something else. But yeah, here's a sign from the government of Alberta: do your part, report a rat. And we've got all sorts of propaganda like that. I'll show you. Rats are coming, Alberta, the only rat-free area in North America.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's
That's so
kind
funny.
of good.
Ooh.
Report rat sightings. It's got this rat has these dark black eyes and then Alberta is outlined in red
That's
in
so
its
funny.
eyes. It's coming for you.
That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, this is some of the propaganda that we got going on in Alberta
And it
to
works.
like maintain our rat-free status. And of course, you know, it takes a lot of resources, but we have farmland here, so that's kind of the big thing. But it is, yeah. Austin in the chat says, I kind of love our quaint little rat-free propaganda, and I
effective.
do too. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is effective, and it's also a source of pride for Albertans, right? Like, it's not just become like a health thing; it's also become like a cultural thing to be rat-free here, rather than just like, oh yeah, like we do that for our health. It's like, no, we do it because we're Alberta, right? Like it kind of takes it up that notch.
Yeah.
So that's
It's that Alberta pride keeping the rats
it's
out.
Alberta pride, keeping the rats out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do you want to tell us where we can go to find this podcast and maybe a little bit kind of the overall message as well again here?
Yes. Yeah, you can go to, I think like on Spotify or whatever, you can go just search up This American Life and you can tune into the episode. But yeah, the overall message was like twofold, was that if as a city, if you want to like mitigate against problems, you really need to start, from the get-go. The good thing Alberta was able to mitigate the rat situation because they knew that they were coming. And so they were able to plan accordingly. I think it was funny because they were saying at the very onset of the rat problem, because the rats weren't in the province, so people didn't even know what they looked like. So they had taxidermied these rats and like brought them in, and and then we're using, I suppose, rat propaganda to get people to understand what's what and what's coming along the way. But the interesting part about this story is that the rat problem in New York City is being leveraged by like mean landlords that are trying to push out certain tenants from their buildings, in order to make more money and resell the units for like Airbnbs and whatnot. And they told an interesting story of a woman and her children that were trying to fight back against their trying to be evicted from their home. But what was also interesting is that the proliferation of rats in New York City was the result of like a pilot project that was actually initially supposed to help the city because they believed that instead of carrying cans, it would be easier for the trash the garbage collectors to lift bags versus lifting cans. And they're right. Apparently, it caused a efficiency 20% efficiency in how they were collecting garbage, but they didn't think about like the smell that's created from having these bags outside, or the fact that rats can eat through garbage through plastic bags
Right.
relatively easily.
Yeah.
But initially, Big Bag or Big Baga, whatever you want to call them, was like all gung ho for it. They're like, you won't smell anything. It's gonna be great. And they donated 600,000 bags to the city, and they're like, go ham. And that's how they ended up in this mess. But now they're trying to fix it. Before that, like I think they were saying at the beginning, only like 8 or 18% of the city had rats, and then now it's like almost like 80 plus. I don't know, listen to the episode for the final numbers, but it's they're trying to rectify it now by bringing back garbage cans, but created a whole array of other costs that the city has to deal with now. But anyway, TBD. Good luck to New York City and their rat situation.
Yeah.
I hope it's not
Yeah.
us next.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you guys saw this, but when New York City was unveiling like their new like standard garbage bin for the city, they had this like big celebration with the mayor out there, and they were
Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
Empire State of Mind, and it was like,
Yeah, and the
it's
rats
about
are
garbage cans.
Yeah, they,
All
they
the
had
comments
rats
were
on.
just, congratulations, New York City. Welcome to the 1950s.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe someday New York City will be rat free. And then Ratatouille can update its little special features that highlight Alberta being rat free. Maybe they'll add New York City to their special features there. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I will be listening to that podcast probably later today or tomorrow. That's really interesting. For my update, I wanted to talk about the Green Line. We have talked about this train line multiple times before on the podcast. This is a project I have been waiting my entire life for. The original study for this project was done in the late 1980s, and construction has sort of begun. We've already moved some utilities. We've already done, a few different kind of preparatory works for this project. The Green Line in Calgary is our third LRT line. This one, however, is going to be low floor light rail. We have already ordered the rolling stock, but then yesterday the provincial government kind of kiboshed it. They said, actually, no, we want you to change the plan. We want you to look into this plan. And I'm putting this as an update, not as a main story, because council is meeting right now discussing this issue and asking lots of questions of the Green Line team, and trying to figure out, like, what can we do to salvage this project? Because all of a sudden you have one of the funders, one of the partners in this project saying, well, actually, I don't know. I don't know if we want to do it, when we've already started. We've already gotten going on this project, and we had something that people are like, okay, you know what? We're getting rolling with it. Cool, let's go with this. But yeah, it's kind of, as it stands right now, it is super, super up in the air what is going to happen. And I'll bring up a couple things here. Let me find where I threw these. While I do this, do you guys have any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, so what was their main concern, this new group? Is it the rolling stock, the right-of-way?
Yeah, so the main concern, let me pull up the right-of-way as it was agreed to by the city here before. Where is a good map? Okay, this one will do for our purposes. Save image and download. Sorry, this is super interesting to listen to, probably.
This is very interesting to listen to. Many people are saying this, Alex.
Many people are saying this. I know.
This is mesmerizing.
So
this is even more interesting to watch.
Yeah, seriously. You guys are sitting there like, wow. Alex looking around at the screens.
And you know what? If you want this incredible content earlier, feel free to check out our Patreon. Or if you want to see this incredible content live while it's ongoing, you can also join the Patreon. And those are the main benefits we offer there. Or if you just like us and want to support the podcast. But we have a wonderful graphic here, Alex. What's going on?
Yeah, so on this page, what we're looking at here is the right-of-way that we were working with before, basically, was the train comes out of Inglewood in the east of downtown, and it goes down kind of right by where the new event center is going to be, the new hockey arena, and then it's going to come down underground. This will be tunneled, and then it'll come out over here at Eau Claire and then continue up Center Street. Basically, what the province has asked for now is move the train from 11th Avenue up to here and integrate it into where there will eventually be the... Oh, you guys can't see... Oh,
we can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Just the map.
Okay, well, I brought up another map. It wasn't showing on the
okay.
on the thing. Here we go. This is what I wanted to show you. So to move it from 11th Avenue and then in line with the CPKC right-of-way here, where there will eventually be the central station. And then instead of going underground on 11th and then going up through downtown and having a couple stations along the way, what they're looking for, or what they're suggesting in this, is to come up above ground and then go in behind City Hall. And there's another image that I'll pull up and share with you guys here. I know this is kind of almost turning into a full story in itself, but I
Works
just
for
wanted
me.
to use these visuals. Here we go. So then, so as you can see here, it comes up above ground and then travels through downtown like that. So basically like a whole rework of everything in order to avoid tunneling. There were other suggestions that were made, like why don't we go down 7th Avenue with the red line and the blue line? And first of all, the red line and the blue line use high floor light rail. So their stations are incompatible with the low floor light rail. So we would have to have some sort of weird staggered station thing. But on top of that, the two lines, the red line and the blue line, already occupy the space too much in downtown at grade, that if you added a third line to it, you wouldn't be able to cross that street as a pedestrian, as a driver, or as a cyclist. Like, it would basically just like build a wall downtown because the train's got a train, right? And so what winds up happening is we have to build a tunnel anyways, right? Like, we either put the green line underground. This was the kind of thought when they were going through this originally, because of course this was a consideration. You could save so much money by using that existing infrastructure. So of course they considered it. But that infrastructure is already so heavily used that if you wanted to put the green line on it, you would have to actually make a new tunnel underground for the red line. So our option was, we can tunnel the red line underground, or we can tunnel this new green line underground. And so they said, well, okay, well, we'll go with the new green line. We'll tunnel that underground from the beginning. So it's a huge, like, either way, we're going to have to build this tunnel underground, building above ground, building like not at grade but above grade. Building the train that way causes issues with our plus 15 system because we have a lot of bridges connecting the buildings downtown. And so, but I don't know, like right now, we don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. A lot of us are very, very frustrated at this issue in the project, because there's 1,000 people on this team working on this project, and now suddenly the future of it is very up in the air. It's not creating predictability. It's not creating clear expectations for businesses, right? Like, it's not creating clear expectations for developers who have been making plans along the right of way saying there will be a train here that people, if I build multifamily housing, will be able to use to get downtown and get to wherever they need to get to, right?
Yeah.
So it's putting not just the plan for this train line in jeopardy, it's putting plans for business in Calgary in jeopardy. It's having a lot of knock-on effects. So we're going to continue to monitor that. Before we move on, do you guys have any thoughts on this very happy, exciting update I've shared with you?
Yeah, you gotta love how last minute this is. I mean, you said that they had already started utility construction, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty last minute for a right of way change for any project. Literally, once shovels are in the ground, your plan on paper is pretty much locked in.
Yeah.
There is, unless things are so horribly broken, there's really no opportunity to change what you have on paper. But what it sounds like to me is, it sounds like that they just are not ready to commit the money to actually doing this project in some sort of way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and of course, it's become a bit of a political football. The current premier, or the current leader of the opposition was the mayor when this project started going through, and so there's a little bit of politics. I'm sure I'm sure there's a little bit of politicking over productivitying. If that's not a word, but yeah, we need product. Basically, we need productivity over politics, right? Like what we have now is trying to play a political game when this is essential infrastructure that the city needs. Yeah, Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you telling this story reminds me, as I was telling you, I've been working at the Infrastructure Institute. We're working on a transit equity paper that will be coming out soon, looking at the history of Toronto's transit, essentially. And yeah, no, you hear a similar story. Transit planning is heavily politicized in the Canadian context, and if you're not careful, unfortunately it's the same communities that are negatively harmed by these decisions. I just came also from a transit equity conference in Baltimore, and that was really eye-opening to understand that, these trains or buses or whatever it may be that we're building they're not just connecting, people from point A to point B. They're connecting communities. They're connecting people to each other. And like you said, there's people that are making plans, whether it be a developer, whether it be a BIA, whether it be a business, trying to understand how they can, calibrate themselves accordingly. And by making these changes on a whim, you're putting not only jobs, but you're wasting taxpayers' dollars, and you're putting the lives of not just this generation, but potentially the next generation at stake in different ways that you may not fully, not you, but whoever's making these decisions without thinking can fully understand. And so I would say a similar, it's not the first time this has happened in the history of transit issues, the way that it's been solved in the past. If anyone's interested, I would look into the Transit City case, look at Save Transit City. That was a big campaign once upon a time, and it was a bunch of people and academics and politicians who got together and said, we're not going to stand for this. And they sort of won in different situations, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
TBD, not TBD. I know the outcome, but it's in the report, so I can't say too much more at the moment.
Yeah. Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll have to, when I listen back, I'll check all of that out. It is frustrating. Austin in the chat asks, can the federal government in Canada insert itself into the provincial government like the province is inserting itself into our city? No, the relationship between those different levels of government are quite different. The city exists basically at the whim of the province. Obviously, there's a lot of legal stuff around exactly how that works, but the province doesn't exist because the federal government says it does, but the municipality exists because the provincial government says it does. So the relationship between those levels of government is quite different, and we basically just serve at the whims of the province. So it's frustrating when something with so much uncertainty happens like this, because the city was rolling forward with it, and it's been a project a long time in the making. And I'm very disappointed and frustrated to see this happening. I've said it a million times before, but I have spent my entire life waiting for this train to be built, and it's frustrating that it's not yet. One last note that I'll end on this is about the ridership. A lot of people, when they hear 30,000 people per day ridership, and so that's probably a trip into downtown and a trip out, right? So 16,000 or 15,000 people per day taking this train, and to a lot of people, some people are saying that's not a lot of people.
That's absurd.
It's a huge amount of people. Imagine all of those people driving instead of taking the train, right? it's still high ridership.
Do you know what I would do for that kind of ridership on any light rail network in the U.S.?
Oh yeah, like the C-Train in Calgary has an incredible amount of ridership, and we don't brag about it enough. We don't give it enough credit, and so yeah, obviously
it's you guys in Edmonton fighting over it. So it's the Alberta cities that really love their light rail.
We have a good system and frankly a pretty cost-effective system. I think there's a lot of ways that we can improve, but pretending like we're like the worst in the world at it that's absurd. That's ridiculous. But with Alex, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think Toronto recently ranked our like streetcars are like the slowest in the world, so I think you're doing fine.
Yeah. So everybody has room for improvement.
Austin said in comments the Norfolk Tide LRT only pulls about 4,000 riders a day. That's that's an interesting system. I could tell you a lot about. It's had some ups and downs, but it's basically in the most general sense light rail to nowhere.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I did like how you said the Norfolk Tide LRT has some ups and downs, like the tide.
Ebbs and flows.
Anyways, let's get on to that. Kind of turned into a bit of a story. I was planning to have that be a little shorter than I made it, but you know me, Talkie McTalkerson.
Yap.
Ethan,
That's all you do, Alex.
It's true. I'm a yapper. Ethan, take us away with this.
All right.
Texas story.
Let's get to our first story. This one comes to us out of Texas. And I'm sure a lot of you folks in chat have heard about Texas Central High-Speed Rail. It's kind of this considered plan for the Texas Triangle to get a high-speed rail network built between the three major cities of the Texas Triangle, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. The main portion that they're currently looking at to start is Houston to Dallas. And recently, in the past couple of weeks, they just got a little bit of money to actually study building the right-of-way. It was $64 million in grants that Texas Central got. And what they're going to use that money for most likely is to plan out that future right-of-way, look at logistics and how much this route is actually going to cost overall in terms of, building the actual rails, building stations, acquiring right-of-way, all that fun logistical infrastructure stuff as well, too. And just seeing that it's getting a financial commitment, even one as small as $64 million in the grand scope of high-speed rail, which is basically just a drop in the bucket when it comes to these massive projects between multiple cities. But it's still really exciting. They're looking at top speeds of 210 miles an hour, which is pretty much world standard. And it's just overall, it seems like a really exciting start to a project that there's some actual financial commitment to. I know Texas Central, it's had some really shaky starts in the beginning. A lot of it has come down to it mainly being a finance issue. The state of Texas really doesn't want to give them any money. A lot of their money has come from federal grants and local grants and stuff like that. So the state's not really funding them. TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation, does not care about this project one bit. If anything, they'd probably actively sabotage it, in my opinion. But, it's still good to see this level, even as small as it is, get funding for the actual transit project. And especially high-speed rail between such an obvious corridor.
Yeah, it is pretty obvious. Have you ever been to Texas, Alex?
No, I have not. I have a friend there. I'm trying to get there. I haven't been there yet.
So someday, Ethan, maybe you can tell us when this project will be done, so that we can start planning the RFU reunion tour on this rail.
Well, we might be getting pension checks and retirement Social Security here in the U.S. before this gets built. But, there's really no official timeline when it comes down to this project. We'll just have to see how it rolls from here, how their studies go, how they get their funding. This is likely going to be a P3 type of project, public-private project, It's not going to be, entirely an Amtrak project or a state of Texas, department project like Caltrain is currently, or the Cascades is in Oregon and Washington. It's going to be something kind of Brightline-esque, but blending a little bit more of government operation in there. Now, yeah, this project is still a ways out. There's still a lot of logistical things to work through, where stations are going to be built, because a lot of the rumors have the stations not actually being built in downtown. But the demand is here on this corridor regardless, and downtowns really don't have the kind of strength that they do in Texas, where a lot of the cities are very decentralized from their downtowns, compared to, say, New York, Boston, Northeast cities, Midwest cities, West Coast cities that are they're a bit more car dependent, and they don't really have that one central area. But one of the biggest problems with this not problem, but one of the biggest things that we can actually see is that there is huge demand for this Texas Triangle. This is probably the most obvious area for high-speed rail outside of the Northeast Corridor and California for high-speed rail, other than maybe the main corridor in Canada, which comprises 50% of the population out there.
Yeah,
but those are top three, and then you have Texas, because I don't know if you two know this, but the low-cost carrier in the U.S., Southwest, actually got its start just flying the Texas Triangle. They did nothing else for like the first 5 to 10 years of operations. They just flew flights around the Texas Triangle cities, made a killing, and grew nationally.
That's how it's done.
It's a huge demand corridor.
Yeah, it is interesting that we in North America are so far behind on this, because I really do think there are different things that are useful for different trips, right? I have some meetings downtown that I have to go to, and I take the bus that stops pretty much right out front my door, and I hop on there and I ride the bus, and it takes me straight downtown. I don't have to think about traffic. I can respond to emails on the way. I can write videos on the way. That's a great tool in that specific case for me, right? And then there are other situations, like if I go to Around the Bend. If I go to Around the Bend, I'm probably going to ride my bike, because it's like an 8-minute bike ride. I kind of meander through the neighborhood a little bit. Some days, if I'm not pressed for time, I might walk there. And that specific tool works for that trip. Next month, I have a meeting that is outside of the city that I have to go to, and I'm going to borrow my brother's car for it, because in that specific use case, the car is the tool that makes the most sense for me to use, right? And so I think using any sort of tool, any of these options, whether it's walking, biking, driving, taking the bus, whatever it is, all of these tools have their place. And I'm pretty frustrated that we're so slow on the uptake of intercity rail and high-speed rail for these cases where it really, really makes sense, right? Like, we have the same issue. Like, Calgary to Edmonton should have a high-speed rail, right? This should have been done already, right? It's great that we're doing it now, but it should have been done already. Same thing with going Windsor to Quebec, right? Like, that line is somewhere that it makes sense to have a high-speed rail, right? And so all of these things, it's frustrating that we're behind, and I hope we really take a long, hard look at ourselves and consider that maybe we need to start using the right tool for the job, and realizing that these are all options. They're all tools that we can use.
Or even just getting standard rail services that are more frequent on these corridors. I mean, a lot of cities in the U.S., while they aren't actually getting high-speed rail, are at least getting some sort of rail service now. We see all this with the Borealis between St. Paul and Chicago. It's gotten huge ridership. It's quite literally sold out every single train between it, and they're already looking at adding a second train to the route. The Piedmont in North Carolina has been constantly seeing ridership gains constantly for the past few years, ever since the pandemic. Its recovery has already surpassed its ridership pre-pandemic. You see it with Brightline in Florida. It's had major success. Even though it's not technically a full high-speed route, it has had its success being very frequent. It runs every half hour to hourly, And that kind of service is huge for people. High-speed rail is awesome. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing bad about it, and it can kill flights perfect and save ourselves on a lot of emissions perfect. But even just getting service started up on our existing rail infrastructure, even if it's not the fastest in the world and won't compete with airlines in terms of speed, it might compete with them in just pure experience alone. I mean, you compare an hour flight to a 5-hour train ride, you don't have to go through security, you don't have to check a bag, you don't have to deal with all the logistical hassles of it. And a lot of people really enjoy that, and we've seen that with other rail corridors. So we'll just have to see how this goes, but not everything has to be high-speed rail, but some things absolutely should.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's the right tool for the job. Alex, you live in like the maybe Toronto exactly, or yeah. Do you have any experience like riding via rail and stuff?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I do. Sorry.
Boy.
I have, anyway, it's a longer story than we have time for, but yeah, no, I've been a lover of Via Rail since I was a child. Long story short. Taking the train to go, I used to live in Montreal, so I used to travel back and forth to go see my friends. I mean, I still do. But when I first moved here when I was like 10, yeah, I would like, my parents would put me on the train and they're like, okay, your friend will pick you up in Montreal on the other end, the next station. So I love the train.
Nice.
Can't get me on any other mode of transportation when it's going to Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Can it be like can it be better? Like what is
yes,
you know?
it can be better.
Oh, it's, like tell us a little bit about that, because right now I don't think the Texas Triangle has any rail connections passenger wise at all. Does it?
It does.
It does?
But they are
Okay.
Amtrak long distance trains.
Okay.
So if you want to get from Houston to San Antonio, there is the Sunset Limited, and that runs once or 3 times a week. It has 3 round trips a week. And if you want to get from Dallas to San Antonio, you have the Texas Eagle, and that runs once a day. But it's coming from Chicago, so you have to remember that you are dealing with all the possible delays that can occur between Chicago and Dallas-Fort Worth.
Right.
So, very good chance that you could have a delayed train because of freight. But
Yeah.
regardless, those are the only connections. There's no direct rail connection between Houston and Dallas either. So,
okay.
now, there is a direct rail connection between Oklahoma City and Dallas, but we can talk about the Heartland Flyer later.
Okay.
What are these
Okay.
names? These names are hilarious.
Right?
I just realized.
They
all
give them
have
a lot of good
names.
names. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a movie. What
Yeah.
was the first one
it
you said?
does,
Sunset
actually.
Limited?
The
Yeah.
Sunset Limited, yeah.
That's
Those are
great.
actually all the trains that I haven't been on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, stay tuned for our podcast live from the Sunset Limited. But okay, so Via Rail in Toronto, you've ridden it plenty of times. Can you what are some of the improvements that you could see there, comparing it to Texas? Like how often does it run? And what's the scheduling like? Like, is it usually on time?
Yeah, it's
Educate
pretty
us a bit.
frequent. Not like 3 times a week. Pretty recurrent. Yeah, you can get multiple trains almost any time, especially going from Toronto to Montreal. It's pretty cheap too. That's why I like it. Like, obviously, if you take the bus, like the mega bus, that can be even cheaper. But I prefer the train. After taking the bus once, it wasn't my cup of tea. But nevertheless, yeah, there are delays. It is prone to being delayed, so you always go like. Always have to prepare yourself accordingly. Also, lately, I feel like when I was younger, there was a better like Wi-Fi service. Like, I always liked the train because I could be there. I have a little desk, and then I can type, and I can do a lot of work. But this time, when I went like a few months ago, it was a real drag to get any sort of service on it. So I was just hotspotting myself the entire time. So that was annoying. But otherwise, at least it's like a relatively comfortable seat for pretty cheap, and there's like a plug, so your devices won't die. So that's what makes me happy, but I guess I'm a simple writer.
Well, you know what though? Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, it can be so much better, right? Like, you're talking about all these little things like the Wi-Fi and, stuff like that. I mean, we have Wi-Fi on airplanes, right?
Yeah.
Like, it
Yeah.
can't be harder to do it on a train, right?
Now,
Or
huge
maybe it is.
advantage, leg room.
Leg room on
The
a train.
ability
That's
to
true,
get
too.
up. I always have
Yeah.
to tell people, I'm like, you can get up and go to the cafe car whenever you want.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
bathroom you can get up for. They're not going to restrict you because they have landing or takeoff.
Yeah.
You're going to have double the leg room on any economy class plane, even more than a first class seat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's comfy.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? No. No.
Yeah, they should build it. They should.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
they honestly should just take the 63 million. Tell them, yeah, build it now. Build it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I concur. For our next story, this one is actually really sad. And this is something that kind of everybody has been talking about, especially in Calgary, especially in cycling circles. And that is that Johnny Gaudreau and his brother were killed while they were cycling. They were run down by a guy driving a car, and apparently he was drunk. He was intoxicated, and I don't. There's been lots of reporting on that and how exactly it happened and all of that stuff. I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the conversation around it a little bit, and the way that we talk about these issues. It seems sometimes that we talk like, oh, things just happen sometimes. This did not just happen. This happened because somebody made a decision to drink, and then they made the decision to get in their car. Whether you say they were impaired or not, obviously decision-making ability is impaired when you're intoxicated, but that's still a choice. I have friends who have gotten drunk and made the decision not to drive because they know that they're drunk. They know that they've had drinks that night, or they make the decision to get to their destination in a different way, right? And so I want to highlight that these were choices made. And Austin says in the comments here, he says, truth is sober drivers make mistakes and kill people too. And this is exactly right. This isn't just a drunk driver's issue. This is a distracted driver's issue. This is our built infrastructure is shit issue. If our infrastructure is designed for you to go higher speeds, you will go higher speeds. If our infrastructure is designed, if our systems are designed to give out driver's licenses like they're candy, you will get people who are driving who I think we all can agree maybe shouldn't be driving. Every single day, if you're behind the wheel, you will see somebody and you will think to yourself, that person should not be on the road. I don't want to share the road with that person. That's not an unpopular opinion. That is just the reality that any driver experiences when you're out on the road. Any pedestrian experiences that. Any cyclist experiences that. We all see it, and I think we all agree that some people shouldn't be driving. But at the same time, if we make driving the only way that people can get work, the only way that people can see their friends and family, the only way that people can do grocery shopping, then obviously we are going to have people who should not be on the road. And so we had a conversation about carrots and sticks last week. I think we need a lot more carrots that create other options for the trips we take. The thing that I really want to highlight here, though, is the way that we report on incidences like this one. And I saw a couple posts on Threads of other other situations like this where a cyclist was killed, or a pedestrian. This one from CBC, this headline reads, "Woman dies after being hit by Winnipeg police cruiser in Riverside Park." that kind of passive language that we use. Oh, like a lady died. A lady died. Yeah, she got hit by a police cruiser. No, somebody was driving that police cruiser and hit this lady with the tool they were using. If somebody gets shot, you're not saying like, oh, like a gun discharged and shot somebody, right? No, like where's the user in this, right? Like where's the person paying attention to the tool that they're using? If somebody got hit on the head with a hammer and died, you wouldn't say, oh my goodness, like a hammer hit them. A hammer fell from this. No, like somebody was handling that, right? Then here's this other headline. This one in Austin: 1 dead after cyclist collides with vehicle in South Austin. What kind of a headline is that? And obviously they caught some heat. They did change their headline. The new headline reads: 1 dead in crash between bicycle vehicle in South Austin. But it doesn't, like, somebody drove into somebody on a bicycle, right? And the way that we report these things is just it's incredibly frustrating. And so on Friday, there was critical mass. If you don't know what critical mass is, it's a kind of a moving protest, a light protest. I might call it maybe more of a demonstration where people go out and they ride bicycles and they just ride around and show that there are cyclists in the city, and there are good reasons to have safe cycling infrastructure. You see people of all ages riding here. You see in this shot a little further up ahead, you can see some people with kids on their bicycles. And of course, everybody's wearing their jerseys if they have them in memory of Johnny Gaudreau on this ride. And I'll thank Austin as well. This is all of Austin Surson's footage. He sent this to me to use tonight. So this is a little bit of a memorial and a little bit of a ride to support cycling infrastructure and support cyclists in the city who may not be comfortable on the existing infrastructure that we do have. I wanted to highlight that, and I want to catch some of your guys' thoughts here now that I've done 100 minutes of straight talking about this.
Well, it is definitely a dark story, and it really does highlight the use of passive voice when it comes to articles describing anything that happens to somebody on a bike. You'll see this all the time. This is nothing new. It's always going to be, this very softening of the blow from, any media source, and then you're always going to somehow see some sort of demonization of cycling from that same media source later on. It always happens. It's continuing to happen. And a lot of this just comes down to the fact that there is just this kind of stigma against the cycling community that they're always breaking laws, they're not following the rules, they're slowing traffic down, and anything that you can use to get away with dehumanizing people on a bike, they're gonna go with it, and they're gonna kind of play along with that. And honestly, even in a situation like this where it is just totally reprehensible, no way that you can actually justify the driver's actions in any way. Their vehicle is separated from the person, and it's ridiculous that we have to keep dealing with this.
Yeah. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, I brought two thoughts. I mean, the first one is I remember having a similar conversation. I interviewed a few months back the bicycle mayor. Well, not the former bicycle mayor of Toronto, and he was telling a similar story about. I guess we're all kind of sharing our own stories with, or I guess what motivated him to get into this sort of role or become a bike advocate. And he was telling a really touching story, similarly of his daughter, who they were biking. They used to bike every morning together, to go to school. And then unfortunately, I think it was either a teacher or a father or someone in the neighborhood had who was a cyclist had been killed, right? And that launched for her a particular quest to like understand like why is it that cyclists are continuing to be killed in our city, what can be done, and failing to get any answers. And as a result, she went on a what he calls like a bike strike, where she's like, I'm not going to get on until we get our act together as a city. And then just recently, in Toronto, similarly, someone else unfortunately was hit. I think it was like a delivery truck or something. Nevertheless, that killed someone, unfortunately. And yeah, and the most poignant part of that conversation we had was like, why is it always with blood that we have to? Why does it take someone dying for us to actually wake up about about how to improve our cycling infrastructure? Why can't it just already be from the get-go a good thing to want people to have the choice? First of all, you're talking about different options in transit, having the choice to either walk, ride, drive, transit, take the train, whatever it may be. And then second of all, make sure that they can do it safely and that they can get home to their families at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good moment to note that in Alberta's traffic law, cyclists are seen the same way as drivers. We are operators of a vehicle, and thus the bikes are seen the same way as cars on the road, and the same road laws apply. But we're not the same, right? When you're driving, you have this metal cage around you. You have all these buttons and these other things going on, right? You're moving at higher speeds. You have more power, higher momentum, all of these different things, right? Whereas when I'm cycling, I'm a sack of meat on two wheels. And if I happen to be riding an e-bike, maybe I have an easier time getting up to 30 kilometers an hour, right? But my mass hasn't changed that much, right? And the impact you have on other people as a cyclist is it's insignificant compared to the impact you have when you're driving, right? And your mass is different, as I said. It's just a different situation. We need to stop seeing them as the same thing. Especially, I think it's also an accessibility issue. When we design our cities that with the expectation that you can only get around by car, or that you're expected to get around by car, or that if you want to ride your bike, that you need to be someone like Nick, who is willing to ride his bike on a main road, who has a road bike, who is able to go fast, who's comfortable with the danger, right? When really, like, you should be designing so that the 8-year-olds in your neighborhood can bike to school. You should be designing so that the 80-year-olds who I have a great uncle who is physically healthy enough to still ride a bicycle, but he is not mentally healthy enough to drive a car. And so what we end up doing when we build only for getting around by car, we are excluding lots of people from our from access to our cities. We're excluding them, whether they're young or whether they're old, or maybe they have a disability or a condition that precludes them from getting around by car on their own, whether that's physical, mental, whatever it is. And so, yeah, this isn't about me wanting to go fast on my bike. I can do that, right? This is about me wanting people to feel comfortable getting around their city in, using the mode of transportation that that they choose to use. Yeah, and it's frustrating. When people were telling me about this, they say, "Did you hear about Johnny Gaudreau?" And it is obviously very sad. Like, he played for the Calgary Flames for 9 years, so there's a big memorial for him at the Saddle Dome right now. I'll share my screen and show this. So there's this big memorial here, and yeah, like it's really like it's upsetting, obviously, but as a cyclist, we hear about this shit every single day, like all the time. We hear about this, and so yeah, it is upsetting, obviously, and it's upsetting for Calgarians to have like this hockey hero that you know we enjoyed seeing play here for 9 years. But what's also upsetting is that this isn't rare. This isn't unusual. This happens all the time. But yeah, so hopefully we can really start thinking about some serious change. I want to give you guys the last words on this one, if you've got them. Alex, you've got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think what you're just going back to what you're saying before. It's not just even like the right cycle, or right. It's really about the right to the city, right? When we're designing for the same people over the same particular modes over and over again, who are we excluding? And believe it or not, it's a lot of people, like you mentioned, from the 8-year-old to the 80-year-old, by excluding them by not taking into account their needs, and as well, it's a detriment to the rest of us as well. Even those who you may consider able-bodied or consider to have more options in life, we're also restricted without fully realizing it. So by really taking into account, trying to fill in those gaps, supporting those communities that are, missing these key services, you can create a better city that's for all of us ultimately. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's very sad to hear this happening once again, and it's also incredibly frustrating because you're like, it's really not hard to do these things that need to be done. Like the solutions are really there. Like it's really really simple. It's been studied to death. No pun intended. But it could be easily implemented. It's really just like who has the will to do it, and who has the will and to implement it and do the right thing.
Yeah. Ethan?
It's just it's just so tired at this point. We know our solutions here. We know what we have to do in order to make in order to reduce situations like this happening. And it doesn't, as Alex just said, it doesn't take a lot of willpower when it comes down. It just takes will. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It really is just down to making the right call, making the right decision for our cities. And we just have to do it. I mean, it's something that we have to do, and we can't let the naysayers get in the way of safety and multimodal transit for our cities.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's great. I appreciate your guys' thoughts. And it leads in well to this question we have from Jen Hall. Alex, do you want to read this question for us and get us started on this conversation? I've just highlighted it in the doc here.
Okay, so the question is: you're abled until you're disabled. If any of you found yourself suddenly disabled, specifically a wheelchair bound, would you be able to comfortably get around your neighborhood without relying on another person or a transport service for assistance? That's a very good question. I do think about that every so often, and I'm like, no. The answer is no.
I'd be screwed.
It's disastrous. It's funny actually because well, it's actually not funny, but my local transit station, they're currently, after all these years, you'd think that the Toronto subway has been open. They're just now implementing. They've been like shutting it down and doing all this construction for like a year and a half now to actually put in an elevator so that it's wheelchair accessible. And I was like, oh snap!
Oh wow,
that's so true. Like if you came to the state, like you couldn't get out. There's no way to get out. There's like the stairway basically to heaven. When you get out of the station, like it's just like row after row that you have to take. It's deep underground. There's no way you could bring a wheelchair. It's even hard to bring a stroller. I remember when my sister we have quite an age gap, so when we take her stroller down, it was a heavy lift, and you have to be able to handle it. But otherwise, so it's not even just wheelchair. It's also like mothers with or people with strollers. It's people with groceries. who are trying to come back as well. I had read an interesting study,
Yep.
and they were talking about the issue with, particularly in Toronto, our streetcars is because there's you have to take a few steps to get up, and in certain communities
Right.
already where the grocery store is super far, so they're in food deserts, period. So the grocery store is super far. They have a lot of food they need to bring back. They have a child, so now you've got a stroller, and you have like one of those, pulleys, those caddies full of food. But they're like, I can't handle lifting the stroller and lifting my food onto the streetcar, so I'm just gonna walk. And then other people from the study that they had done, they were like, oh, we just don't buy groceries. And I was like, oh snap, that's horrible. The impact that it has on your health, and as a family as well. And so, when you're thinking about and the thing is, like, streetcars or the bus, they'll lower it for a wheelchair, as they should, but they don't necessarily lower it, or you can't necessarily put out the ramp or they don't want to, I should say, for every person with a stroller, every person with like a caddy as well. So yeah, once again, going back to what we were saying before, if you're not planning for accessibility, it's also a detriment to everyone else too. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think I've shared this on the show before, but I was listening to this podcast from CMLC, which is the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation. But they mentioned they had this speaker at one of their events who said everyone is temporarily able-bodied. At some point, something is going to break, whether it's temporary or permanent. You could break a leg, break your arm even, right? Like that can cause a lot of problems for you. Lose your eyesight, your hearing loss problems, like whatever it is. You can, right now you might be able-bodied, but you might not always be. And then that's, if you're not able to look outside of yourself and say, hey, maybe we should do this for other people, just, say, I'm going to do it for myself, right? Like, just if you have to take a selfish perspective, then, okay. As for my neighborhood, I think there are some things I can get to. Like, I'm thinking about where there are curb cutouts and stuff, which obviously aren't totally ideal. In the summer, they're not bad, but in the winter, if they get piled up with snow and ice from snow clearing of the road, that causes an issue for accessibility. The bus, I've made videos about this before. If the bus stop isn't cleared very well, if I'm using a walker or wheelchair, that's going to cause problems. Or if we're even talking about, visual impairments. There are a lot of spots in my neighborhood that don't have the tactile strips yet. Things like that, right? These things that improve the accessibility for a neighborhood. And most importantly of all, I wouldn't be able to get to around the bend because there is not a continuous sidewalk. I would actually have to, if I were to be wheelchair bound, I would actually have to wheel around on the road to get to around the bend for a small portion of the trip. So like, who are we building communities for, right? I think that's really, really interesting. Any other thoughts on that, or are we ready to move to this next question?
Yeah, just another quick thought here, but just at least in my area, not only is it super car-dependent planning, but you also have to deal with the fact that the weather is horrible in summertime when it comes to heat. It's just it's dangerous is when it comes down to it. When you're dealing with temperatures of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, over 40 degrees Celsius, you are dealing with temperatures that can kill. And having no shade trees out there, it doesn't matter if you are disabled or able-bodied.
Yeah.
You're still dealing with dangerous conditions when it comes to that, and that does reduce accessibility for everyone at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ethan. Do you want to read us this next comment?
No, I think you should. No, I'm just kidding. This comment comes to us from Sean Troy, and they said, I do struggle with not riding fast on my bike, LOL. Maybe it's because it's a road bike. Maybe it's because those cars are going too fast right beside me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of something that I've had to work on a little bit, because when I'm cycling along and the cars beside me are going super fast, I'm doing my darndest to keep up, but I'm really I'm wearing myself out to try and do it. And so what I've started to do when I take the back routes, I ride really, really slow, because there's no cars around, there's nobody around. I can just kind of enjoy the bike ride, and let it basically be a walk that's like a little bit faster.
You don't know how
I've-
enjoyable
yeah.
it is to go down just an empty well, not car free, but just low traffic street on a bike with some shade. The
Yeah.
most perfect thing. Or on a mixed use path with nobody else on it. It peak riding.
Yeah, yeah. Are you much of a bike rider, Alex?
No, I mean, no, I'm not, just because like I live on one of the like major streets in Toronto, which has
Oh,
no
okay.
bike lane. It's all straight. It's straight up car. It's like I could take the meandering path, like through the neighborhoods all the way downtown to where I would need to be, but that would take
Right.
a really long time. Like it just wouldn't make any sense. Although they did put those
Yeah.
like e-bike, those Bixie bikes, whatever you call them,
Okay.
bike
in
share.
the neighborhood. Yeah, there you go. The bike share
Yeah.
stations. But I was just like, the bike share to where? To nowhere. There's nowhere to go with them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's safe. That's safe because it's a major street. I do not, even as a pedestrian, you're just like the corner one of the major intersections in my neighborhood. Like there's like that metal pole that they put, just like regular pole. It's been knocked over multiple
Right.
times
Right.
from a car turning too fast. So I was like, and even in my neighborhood, it's heavy children. It's like there's like 10,000 schools here, so there's just kids everywhere, which is nice. But what's not nice is that there isn't proper like crosswalks or like those like buttons that you can push, whatnot, to help people walk. And so we've had a few children who've been struck and died over the years as well. So I'm like, it's really not built for it. It's barely built for walking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's walkable. It's just not cyclable.
I get you.
Yeah.
Jen has a really good comment in the chat here, and she actually said, trying to keep up with the cars feels useless, as I think psychologically the drivers assume no matter what that you're going really slow. They won't look at their speedometer. They'll just think, bikes are slow. Must pass.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably true. Yeah, yeah. This has been a great podcast.
It's been an awesome show.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I did too much talking, but the good news is I won't be here next week. So you'll
How
have.
is that good news?
Yeah.
Oh, everybody gets to take a break. Take a break from
Ooh.
listening to me yap on. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Let's start with you, Alex. Where can the good people find you?
Oh yeah, you can find all the work that I'm up to at www.untitledplanning.com. You can also Untitled Planning on Instagram, on YouTube. We have a channel as well, talking about all things urban, all things planning, all at once. So make sure to check it out there. Oh, and we have a newsletter,
Yeah,
as well. So if you want,
Oh, you have a newsletter
Ooh,
too.
yes, we
newsletter.
do. Yes, we have. We do. We have a lot of exciting things coming out in terms of a documentary that's coming out, exploring some of the things that we've discussed here today and more. We have a podcast series coming out as well. We have more of the Pop Culture Club series. The one I had mentioned last time. We have another movie that will be dissecting as well from an urbanist lens. So if you want to be updated about when those are coming and when we're hosting events or opportunities to get involved with our platform, then yeah, check it out.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, we follow along with that, and we encourage everyone else who's listening to as well. Ethan, where can we find you?
Folks, you can find me over at Climate and Transit on any platforms. I've really been trying to make a presence on Threads now, too, but main platforms are, of course, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. You can find me there at Climate and Transit. Alex, where can we find you?
You can find me at Humane Cities on YouTube and Instagram. I do promise I'm working on some videos, guys.
It's okay, guys. Alex's
worry
next
about
YouTube video, just a week away.
Just a week away. It's still
I've been
just a
bad
week
on it
away.
too. I can't blame you. It's been a good. It's gonna be 3 weeks since I've last uploaded on this Friday, but there will be a new video. I promise.
So I'll have something up at some point, I promise. I've been working on some other really cool things that are locally important. They're just not content makey things that I'll be talking about in future shows. But in the meantime, you can find me at Humane Cities. You can also find me at Alex Williams YYC. Thanks for tuning in. We always do our sign off, Alex, and Ethan says
I say train good, car bad.
I say feet first. Nick says two wheels good. Do you have like a little urbanist motto that you want to sign off with?
Oh, snap. I thought about this last time I was here, and I should have actually came prepared, but the answer is no. I don't have a particular one that comes to mind. Other than, you know what, keep getting involved in your city, y'all. That's all I gotta say.
I like that.
That's a good one.
We can workshop it to kind of be like pithy and catchy.
Next time. I promise.
Next time. We'll spend a full episode working on your catchphrase.
That'll be an extra one for the Patreon.
Yeah, suggest any. I'm willing to adopt it. Yeah.
Okay, in the comments, people can suggest a catchphrase for Alex. Ethan.
Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Your support is greatly appreciated. And train good, car bad.
And feet first.